Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News and
Statewide News Service.
Statewide News Service, excuse me, and jbiztechvalley.com.
Well, thanks, Rabbi. And we have a returning guest with us, Senator Simcha Felder from Borough Park, Brooklyn. Thank you very much for coming back. We must have done something right the first time because you came back. So
I'm delighted to be here.
Okay.
Probably the biggest issue that in this session that I know that you're very concerned with, and of course I am too, is the education tax bill that was presented. It's not a new bill, but...
Where does that stand now?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. Okay. I cover Borough Park, Midwood, parts of Bensonhurst, and Sunset Park as well. I want to make sure that all my constituents know I'm proud of them, and I am. I'm humbled to serve them.
This is your second...
This is my second term in the Senate. I was in the City Council for 8 years, a little more than 8 years. So the education tax credit, so let's just be clear that it's important that every child have a good education, whether they're in public or non-public schools. Of course, that's the key to having an adult that lives a productive life. So the education tax credit, it's been many, many years that advocates have been trying to do something to alleviate the tuition burden that non-public school parents have. And over the years, there has been, I would say, a token recognition that we have to do something to help the schools that are educating children in the non-public areas. So we know that as a result of laws, we have bus transportation that's mandated for non-public school children. We know that non-public school kids get lunch, textbooks, some nursing care, and some other things. But there has never been any recognition of the fact that a tuition-paying parent is paying for secular education as well as religious education if it's a religious school. And that why shouldn't there be some recognition of that amount and the savings that should be either savings or something being done to help tuition-paying parents. So we have a piece of legislation now that recognizes that and says that any individual or corporation can contribute to a scholarship foundation up to 90% of what they would normally pay the state. And then those monies could be used for tuition scholarships for children in non-public schools. In addition, even though there are billions of dollars in the state budget for public school children, an equal amount, the total amount for the first year we proposed was $150 million. An equal amount, $75 million, up to $75 million can be contributed from the amount of money you would owe New York State, 90% of the amount you would owe New York State, and you could contribute it to a scholarship foundation that would help public school children, not with tuition, because they don't pay tuition, but with resources that are not available to them.
That's a high limit.
Not high enough.
Really?
Yeah, not high enough. We think a lot more money should be able to be contributed.
Because even public schools, like I know they cut sports programs.
Exactly. I was going to say art programs, music programs, sports programs, a lot of the types of programs that exist in public schools where a child, for example, that's not doing so well educationally had an opportunity to excel in music or art and sports and have that self-esteem and have that carry over to the other studies. A lot of schools, that's the first thing that went. So we passed this bill last year. This is a bill that I co-sponsored with Senator Marty Golden and spearheaded by the majority leader, Senator Skelos. And a lot of work was done by the Education Committee Chair, Senator Flanagan. And this bill, in essence, would benefit any and every person in New York State. It's not specific to New York City. Any and every person in New York State. If somebody, it benefits a taxpayer by giving them the ability to decide what they want to do with their tax money. Who doesn't want to have a bigger say over the tax dollars you owe? It benefits the recipients, whether it's the public schools for public school children or non-public schools for non-public school
Do
children.
you understand the outrage from the teachers' unions and from public education unions and the private and the public sector as to why they're lobbying against this bill?
Yeah, it's clear, because the teachers' unions, all they care about is their own membership. So obvious in their heads, for some reason, and I'm hoping still that God will send them a speedy recovery, in their minds, and I'm not talking about the members, I'm talking about in some of the leadership,
Right.
in their minds, any assistance to non-public schools somehow in their heads translates to a diminution of the power that they crave. Well, we don't care about that. We care about the children. And it does not come at the expense of the public schools whatsoever. So if we care about the kids, you asked the question. Right now, the Senate passed the bill, and unfortunately, the Assembly has not included it in its budget proposal. They passed a DREAM Act, which if you're in favor of that, that's fine. They did not include it at all in their budget proposal, which is a shame, because again, the Assembly is making a statement by excluding this from their budget proposal. They are saying that tuition-paying parents are not a priority. Too bad, suffer, do whatever you have to do. And the governor, in his budget proposal, included it, but linked it to the DREAM Act, which 2 or 3 weeks before the election, the governor came to my district and said that it was a matter of justice to have this education tax credit passed. And now it became a matter of justice with strings attached. That's not a matter of justice. That's a matter of justice with strings attached. So I'm not saying that the Assembly or the governor are bad. I'm not judging their character or anything. That's not my goal. The goal is here to get assistance and a recognition by government that tuition-paying parents, non-public school parents, have kids in schools that are being educated and saving the state billions of dollars. And we don't want the state to pay for religious education because there's a separation of church and state. But whatever they can do legally to help tuition-paying parents should be done. And this is a token. It's a token, but that goes a very long way in finally helping tuition-paying parents.
So have you been in touch with the Assembly Education Committee Chair, Kathy Nolan, and I know she's tied in with the unions very heavily. Are you able to come to some sort of compromise, or it's just dead in the water for this year?
I'm not a power player in this thing. I'm just a senator that's trying to serve my district.
And sometimes the rank and file senators make more progress than the leaders and the big power brokers.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking you.
Oh, it's a good question. Okay, so what I would say to you is that I'm doing whatever I can do to get people throughout New York State, public and non-public school parents, involved in a petition campaign to their assembly members and to the governor and saying, please pass the education tax credit now. In fact, we have you can certainly call my office for a petition at 518-455-2574.
Right.
2754. I'm sorry, I'm only a CPA. I got my numbers mixed up. 518-455-2754. Or you can go online. We have an online petition, which is tuition tax credit. I'm sorry, I slipped my mind. It'll come to me in a minute.
Okay.
But if you call me, I'll give you the online.
Okay.
Okay.
So if there's any hope
I
for
find
you
it
have a
here,
little
I'll-
bit
Of course,
for
of
passing?
course, we are hoping that they'll do the right thing. The Senate put forth its budget proposal, And in our budget proposal, we have included, again, the education tax
There's
credit.
now negotiation, I mean, the Senate
Yes,
and the
yes,
House
yes.
could work it out.
But with the
though.
Yes.
leadership, not rank and file members, and he's simply saying it's a rank and file member, but I'm just saying,
But Dean
you know, for
Skelos
exa-
is with you, I mean,
But
he'll
why-
stick up for you.
I'm with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not with me. He's ahead of this. I wasn't even the Senate when he was in favor of it. So I am very involved and very, very passionate about it. But
what, now, there's been a lot of the members of the observant Jewish community up lobbying and bending everyone's ear about including this and getting this in. I just don't know. I think they're just preaching to the converted. They're only meeting with the people who already support this. And I don't see them meeting with the folks in Kathy Nolan's office or the people in the Assembly Education Committee members to get them to push it even and try to convince those who are recalcitrant to try to move them along. I just don't know where, you know, I just don't know if the effort is going to make a difference, you know, is going to come to fruition.
well, that's what you're here for,
You know.
the Jewish view.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that people will hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I've been saying the same thing. They should do
But if
everything and
there's-
anything
Yeah, but
to
If there's no
with the-
communication, if you're not talking from one house to the other, then how does that, does it only have to be the leadership talking?
No, so let me just answer. You're going back to the original question. So I don't speak to Kathy Nolan. I say hello. I think she's a very nice lady. But I have colleagues in the Assembly that speak to Kathy Nolan.
Such as
and
Doug
they
Hyken.
should do, they will do, and I'm sure they are trying to do whatever they can. And that's what, you know, that's the, you know, and I'm not saying that it's a prohibition, but the point is, in terms of really making an impact, my colleagues speaking to me about something would have a greater impact, certainly one of significance, and her colleagues are speaking to her. I'm hoping that they're doing what I think that they'd be doing to try to get this done.
What about
Well,
the new speaker over?
Well, but the speaker is just going with what the rank and file members of the Assembly are telling him. He doesn't, he's in the
Well, I don't
Senate,
know.
So he doesn't know what the speaker is.
The speaker, the new speaker, was on record as a sponsor of this
Right.
legislation.
Because I know there was pictures, he went to Borough Park.
That's
and he talked
correct.
to all the
That's
rabbis.
correct. He took a position, which I think is an admirable one, and he said that as speaker, he's removing his name as a sponsor from any legislation,
Right.
which is fine. But he was in support of the bill. But that's as a member.
That's
now
right.
he's a speaker,
That's
and
right.
he has a lot of members have a lot of different interests. What we are saying is that the education tax credit must be a priority, and we should not compromise. If it doesn't happen this year, you know, anything, I don't want to say it'll never happen, but it's not going to continue on. The momentum that exists for it to happen is now. And imlo achshavei masai, if not now, when?
Well,
Right?
I remember the medical malpractice debate took 5-6 years before they came to a conclusion with how to make that happen, before the doctors just ran out of the state and said we can't afford the insurance. So there are issues that take a longer period of time than this bill has been taken. So it could happen, Mitzvah Hashem, it could happen soon. So
But we agreed to disagree.
well, okay.
I know, not that it can't happen.
No.
All I'm saying is that the issue
Right.
of getting help from government for tuition-paying parents is a lot older than 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's a lot older. And it's about time that this inequity is addressed without the politics surrounding it having that impact.
And there are a lot of politics involved in this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really heated issue.
Yeah.
That, you know, people on the $1 Million Staircase chanting and against this, and some people, smaller groups, chanting in favor of it. I'm just hoping, you know, what goes on behind closed doors, you'll keep us abreast on. And
I don't know what goes on.
Well, they report back to you.
Oh, yes,
Your
yes.
majority leader reports back to you and tells you what went on.
You find out about information before I find out about
I
it
do,
sometimes,
but
so
I don't want to
maybe you'll let me know.
All right, I'll keep you posted. What is the difference between the Education Investment Tax Credit and Education Investment Incentives Act?
The Senate last year, the Senate and the Assembly, I believe, called it the same thing. This year, the Assembly is referring to it as a tax credit. We refer to it as the incentives and investment incentives. If you ask me why, I have no idea. I don't have an answer for that. But it's our version of this piece of legislation, which we passed, helps parents significantly more than a version that has not been passed by the Assembly.
So the Senate, did they pass, did they even take up the DREAM Act at all? Did they vote it down?
No,
Why
we
not?
did take it up last year.
Yeah, but why not?
And it got defeated. Why didn't they take it up? In order for a bill to come to the floor, there has to be a consensus by the majority of the people that will be voting by it. I'm not here to do reform. I know the new speaker in the Assembly has talked about reform, but those are the facts of life not only in Albany, but in many, many levels of government and the city council as well. Unfortunately, if I wake up one morning, even if it's the best bill around, I say, I'd like to have this come to the floor. It just doesn't happen. So the DREAM Act, I would say to Senator Skelos and Senator Klein's credit, did come to the floor last year and got defeated. The tax credit never came to the Assembly floor last year and has not come to the Assembly floor this year. So I would say it's the onus now lies on the Assembly to do the right thing, bring it to the floor, and if there's not enough support, then it'll go down.
What's the fear of the Assembly? Well, I know you don't know, but speculation is that maybe that when they do bring it to the floor, it will pass, possibly.
Yes.
And that's what their fear is, that
Yes.
they don't want to even bring it to the floor. Because
That could be. Or maybe they're using it as a bargaining chip, which isn't good either, right? Why should tuition-paying parents be used as a bargaining chip? Illegal immigrants who would get benefited by the DREAM Act, and I'm not passing judgment as to whether somebody should or shouldn't get that benefit, but illegal immigrants are important enough to put the DREAM Act to a vote in the Assembly floor to pass it. But legal immigrants who have tuition bills and paying for tuition for their children are not important enough to be put forth for vote? Explain that to me.
Frustrating, isn't it?
Frustrating is right.
Yeah. Aggravating.
Yeah.
Okay, I asked you once if you figured out, if you understood why the unions and the opposition, their arguments, and you said, I don't know what they're, I can't imagine why they would be against this, or and then you went in and you explained what their arguments were.
I thought. So now this is the commentary. It's like in the Talmud, you have the text and the commentary.
Right.
Now I'm going to be the commentary to myself, which is probably interesting. The response to your question was based on the merit.
Yes.
There is no logical explanation
Okay.
to why they would be opposed.
Okay.
If we're talking about the politics or the ugliness of it, then I get back to what I told you. The unions in general, they survive based on the power they have. The teachers, on the whole, like in any other profession, do an extraordinary job in educating our children. The leadership has their own agenda, and we know that clearly because we saw by police matters in New York City, the Garner case on Staten Island, the UFT union leadership had an opinion about it.
Right.
Explain that.
Okay.
So they have their own agenda, which has very little to do with protecting their members, unfortunately. And they believe that they have to, that by tuition-paying parents getting any assistance, somehow it hurts them, their power, their membership.
Did they put out an official memo in opposition?
I don't know if they, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I'll have to find out.
But
'Cause
unofficially, officially, I can guarantee that they are adamantly opposed
No,
to this.
because I invited the president of the New York State United Teachers on the program here, and their press guy said, who's the gatekeeper, said, this is not the forum we want Karen McGee on.
Yeah, why would they want her on this program? Because
Because
she would be forced to answer the question you just asked me, and would say to you something like this: well, public school children are funded inadequately, and any money that goes to helping tuition-paying parents is diverting money from money that can go to public school kids. I didn't do a good imitation. I don't know what she sounds like.
But I heard that.
But what I would say to you is that's hogwash, or that's
Right.
ridiculous, because you're talking about in a billions of dollars budget where kids are getting. We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars per child for non-public school children, and they deserve every penny. Whatever can be done to educate children should be done. But does that mean that taking $75 million for non-public school children out of the state budget, it's not out of the education budget.
Right.
No one could say that, right?
Right.
To help tuition-paying parents and finally give them a little bit of help? It's ridiculous.
And do you think it was, well, the governor, you said the governor came to Borough Park on a Sunday recently to...
It was before the election. Before his election, he came to Borough Park.
But didn't he come to Borough Park recently in like February or January?
No,
he didn't
the
come?
speaker came to
Yeah,
Borough
definitely.
Park.
Oh, it was the speaker?
Yes.
Okay, so here you have the assembly speaker coming to Borough Park and meeting and having you on the stage,
Well, Assemblyman Hyken hosted him in Borough Park.
but he's from...
The speaker,
Yeah.
not Shelley Silva, the new
No,
speaker,
the new
Carl
speaker.
Heastie.
Yeah, Carl Heastie, yeah.
Assemblyman Hyken hosted him in Borough Park
Okay.
at an event which I was invited to, and many people, other elected officials were
Right.
invited to, where he said very clearly that he was a sponsor of the education tax
Right.
credit, but he's taking, and he thinks it's an important issue. It's a very important issue. I would have to believe he's being honest, because
Did he say anything substantive about him?
he said, at that point, I believe he said that should be, it's something that's very important. He was non-committal, and he said, that it's something that he knows is very important. Now, this is a man who was a sponsor of this legislation, and I think he's I give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay,
Well, if it's that important,
put it on the floor.
why isn't it as important? Not more important. I'm not even getting it.
Yeah.
Why isn't it as important as giving illegal immigrants free tuition?
Does it have to...
I'm just saying, just the like you saying, just a normal way of doing business. Can the speaker just put the bill out if he wants to?
A
Well, through the
speaker.
Rules Committee.
All I would say is that a speaker or majority leader, a speaker in the city council, other localities, if they are actually in charge, in other words, if they have the power they need, yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Now, if they're capable, they finesse it in a way so that they try to do it in a manner where they gather the support of enough people to do what they wish.
And no one's embarrassed.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So I'm asking is that, now I don't know if you knew this, if you had, word got back to you, but the assembly speaker had several Jewish, like a dozen Jewish legislators in his office, and,
I don't know
nothing
anything
got
about
back.
it.
Okay, so can I switch topics for a
Yeah,
second?
and I would
okay?
just say,
Yes.
just to finish
Okay.
the topic, because you want to switch, this is not a Jewish issue. We're on the Jewish view.
I know.
But this is an issue
Parochial
of
schools.
equity for non-public schools, whether they're private schools, religious schools, Catholic schools, any schools.
Right.
And it's a matter of being fair to all New York State taxpayers. And non-public school parents are New York State taxpayers.
So
Excellent.
there's another issue that's outside your district, but has gotten a lot of people riled up around the state, and it has to do with East Ramapo School District.
Yeah.
What have you, it's of no interest to you, or
It's,
it's just
first
nothing?
of all, a lot of
Just-
things are interesting
Does it
to
set
me.
a dangerous precedent? Can you?
I can't tell you because I have made it almost a rule
Yeah.
throughout my career in public service, and that was so in the New York City Council
Yeah.
and continues in the Senate. I focus on my district.
Right.
This education tax credit helps New York State taxpayers.
Right.
But
also
this is about my district.
Oh, I know.
If somebody calls me up about an issue somewhere else that's outside of my district, and I'm talking about 2 blocks outside my district, the first thing I say is, have you spoken to your elected official?
Right.
Now, no one would refuse helping somebody else in their time of need. That's not what I'm talking about. This issue is a very, very complicated, detailed issue that is being worked on by people who live there and who are obviously very, very upset about this issue. And
And it
leaders, and they're working on it.
It has to do with someone overseeing the East Ramapo School Board members, and then if he doesn't see them acting properly, he can overrule the elected school board members, even though the overseer is not elected. And therefore, you're taking away voting rights from the people who were elected on to the school board.
Well,
And that's
clearly,
in essence, that's
Yeah.
what it's
well,
about.
but clearly, whatever the issue is, that whether it's East Ramapo or otherwise, it would be a terrible precedent to make East Ramapo different than any other school district in the state.
Just another issue, really, and really, again, really New York State, but our issue. There's a lot of there's a lot of anti-Semitism going around the world, and Jewish communities are even threatened a little bit. And anybody, blinks the wrong way and may the right to, they get scared. What is he walking around? And I in the temple. There's a lot of these issues. Is there anything from the state that is maybe because NYPD is strong enough. I know they're almost like an army in its own right. But maybe from New York State to tighten up some anti-terrorism or?
There are a whole bunch of anti-terrorism bills that are being worked on in the Senate and the Assembly. Cyber terrorism, other kind of terrorism, and government, I think that there's a sincere effort at all levels of government to do whatever we can to combat terrorism. But we know, number one, God has to protect us. We can do whatever we want, right? At the end of the day, we live in miraculous times. You get on the subways, whatever else, and the reason we're safe, there's no question in anybody's mind, is because God's protecting us, period. I would say the best effort is really what we as individuals have to do to be more cognizant of what's going on. We, for the most part, for years, read about a terrorist attack, God forbid, in Israel or elsewhere, and we're really pretty much detached. It's only more recently that we're hearing about things, and the attack, certainly September 11th, that we're becoming more sensitive and, more sensitized to it. And the need for our schools, for our places of worship, our synagogues, our shuls, our public schools. And we just had a public protection hearing today, and there was discussions about what plans are in place for schools. Are teachers, principals trained, supervised to be able to know how to lock down the place? So the more, I think, yes, we have a program that got implemented and it was funded by the Republican majority before I got there to put security cameras throughout the district, and that was something that Assemblyman Heiken worked on to get security cameras near schools, and that's all good. You know what I mean? Everything helps. Everything helps. Lighting, having additional lighting, but I would just, I would just suggest to your average viewer that it's important, the things that you can do yourself, having increased lighting, not talking on the phone while you're walking in the street.
Being more vigilant.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the segue of you being the crime-fighting senator. Because you were very...
Yeah, right.
You were right there when someone was stealing 5 cans of coffee, and, you tackled
Let
it.
me put this to rest. I was across the street and I thought somebody was being mugged.
Okay.
And that's why I came running.
That's vigilant.
The clip that you saw, in fact, is the end
Okay.
of my. But I think that any person, you know, if you saw what I saw,
Yeah.
your instinct would have been, oh my gosh, I better do something.
Okay.
So
and that's the instinct, whether it's a terrorist or someone stealing coffee.
Yeah. So it's a good
you
point.
Don't know.
No, so so I mean, today with the phones, I think there was a senator that wanted to propose ticketing people for walking in the street while talking on the phone. I'm not talking
crazy,
about
yeah.
that.
Right,
I'm not interested in tickets at all, you know, unless it's car safety. But I think that the more that we as individuals, as you've mentioned, are vigilant
Yes.
and know what's going on when we walk in the streets, see what's happening, that's the greatest protection. No one can.
Well, I think you did a wonderful tackle, and you did a wonderful job getting that guy.
All right.
You want him to vote for the New York Giants?
All right.
Maybe he wants the New York
Okay.
So
Giants.
we'll leave it on that.
All
note.
right.
Okay.
Senator, we're out of time. It's always good that you visit us every year because there's always new issues and enlightening our audience. And thank you very much. Keep up the good work for not only for the people of your district, but for New York State. And your credit to the Jewish people and Orthodox Judaism. And do everything in good health.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.